Poor food truck girl ignored the Millionaire CEO in line until he whispered, "Still remember me." It was just after 7 o'clock a.m. in Old Town Nashville. The streets were alive with the hum of early morning commuters, the sharp hiss of bus brakes, and the clatter of shopkeepers unlocking their doors. The crisp autumn air was filled with the scent of roasted coffee and sizzling bacon, drawing a line of regulars to a small food truck tucked at the corner of Pine and 4th. Painted in warm yellows and oranges, Sunrise Bites stood out like a sunrise on wheels, its hand-written chalkboard menu already smudged from a busy start. Caleb Walker stood in line, his tailored navy coat unbuttoned, silk tie loosened at the collar. One hand held his phone, filled with unread emails and tension. The other ran through his hair as he sighed, eyes distant. The weight of a restless night and a boardroom confrontation clung to him. For someone whose name echoed across headlines and earnings reports, this food truck corner was strangely grounding, real, unfiltered, anonymous. Just as he stepped forward, ready to speak, a clear voice rang out from the truck. "Morning, folks. Sorry, but we're down to our last breakfast wrap. Only one left," said a woman inside. Caleb opened his mouth. "Then I'll take—" "Actually," she interrupted gently, stepping into view, wiping her hands on a faded sunflower-mannered apron. "I think Mr. Hargrove here was ahead of you." She smiled. Not sweet, not dismissive, just certain. Caleb turned, blinking. Behind him stood an elderly man with a weathered cane and a U.S. Navy pin on his cap. The man gave a small nod, a little surprised himself. Natalie, the blonde woman running the truck, leaned forward, her voice softer now. "Same as always, sir?" The old man's eyes twinkled. "You remembered." "Of course I did. Egg, no cheese, extra salsa, coming right up." As she turned to prepare the wrap, Caleb remained where he was. He wasn't offended, just caught off guard. He couldn't remember the last time someone had looked past his position in line, or his position in the world. He glanced down at his watch, then back at the truck. No one else seemed surprised. The line moved on, like it always did. "Well," he said, voice low but amused. "That's fair." Without turning around, Natalie answered matter-of-factly, "I run this place like my grandma ran her kitchen. First come, first served. Doesn't matter if it's a billionaire or a baker." She said it casually, without a hint of sarcasm. She had no idea who he was. Or maybe she did, and didn't care. Caleb chuckled softly, genuinely. It had been a long time since he felt this unseen, and strangely, it felt good. "Well," he said, tilting his head slightly, "I guess I'll have whatever's still available." Natalie turned then, meeting his eyes for the first time. She was younger than he'd expected, late 20s maybe. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her eyes were a quiet shade of blue that reminded him of some long-forgotten lake in childhood. "Lucky for you," she said with a playful lift of her brow, "we never run out of coffee." She handed him a paper cup, steam curling from the top. No frills, no logo, just hot, honest coffee. He took it, their fingers brushing for the briefest second. Her hands were warm, real, no manicures, no polish, just a thin silver ring and the scent of cinnamon. As he stepped aside to let the next customer through, he looked at her again. Her back was already turned, refilling the griddle. For a moment, the world slowed around him. Then, softly, barely above a whisper, he said, "Still remember me?" She paused. Her head turned just slightly. A crease formed between her brows. "I'm sorry?" she asked, but not unkindly. Caleb smiled faintly, shook his head. "Nothing, just thought you looked familiar." Natalie gave a half-smile, already focused on the next order. She had no idea that the man she'd just handed a cup of coffee to, without flattery, without fawning, was Caleb Walker. Billionaire, CEO, Forbes Under 30 legend, and more importantly, the same hungry boy she once sat beside on a cold cement step outside a shelter, offering him half a sandwich and a smile that saved his life. She didn't remember yet, but he did. The next morning, just after dawn, The familiar hum of tires pulled up to the corner of Pine and 4th. Caleb Walker sat quietly in the back seat of his sleek black sedan, staring out the window, not at forecasts or acquisitions, but searching for a yellow-orange food truck. "Same place, Mr. Walker?" his driver asked. Caleb nodded. "Same place." By the time he stepped onto the sidewalk, a small line had already formed. Regulars stood chatting, coffee cups warming their hands. And there she was, Natalie, pouring syrup over waffles for a toddler and his mother, sunlight catching the strands of her golden hair. He quietly took his place in line again. By the 3rd morning in a row, Natalie looked up and smirked. "You again?" she said, already pouring a cup of black coffee. "I'm starting to think you don't actually live in an office tower." Caleb smiled. "I like the coffee." She handed it over. "Right. That's why you've never once ordered food." "I'm not a breakfast person," he said with a shrug. She raised an eyebrow. "You never order food. Are you on a billionaire diet or something?" He blinked. "Something like that." She grinned. "Well, coffee doesn't count as a personality." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Caleb laughed, a real, unscripted laugh. Not for business, not for appearances. "Touche," he said, taking a sip. "I'll try to develop some character by tomorrow." "Good. We serve sarcasm here for free, but you'll have to earn the muffins." Their banter became a quiet ritual. Natalie noticed how he always hesitated before ordering, eyes flicking to the menu like he might ask for something more, but never did. Still, she remembered his preferences: medium roast, no cream, 1 sugar, stirred exactly after the 3rd sip. And Caleb? He noticed everything. The way she bent to tie a little girl's shoelaces. How she always slipped a roll to Mr. Lorenzo in the wheelchair. The way she sang softly to herself while wiping down napkin dispensers. He saw the kindness in her every motion, unannounced, unperformed. "You always remember what people like," he said one morning as she handed him his coffee. Natalie glanced up. "That's kind of the job, isn't it?" "No," Caleb replied. "Not everyone does it like you." There was something in his voice, something unguarded. Natalie tilted her head, trying to place it. But then more customers came, and the moment slipped by. That night, in his high-rise apartment, Caleb poured himself a drink and opened a small wooden box he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a faded, crumpled napkin, brown paper, soft and worn. The ink had almost disappeared, but the words were still there. "Don't forget you have a future." The handwriting was loopy, like a child's. He remembered the girl in the food line at the shelter, the way she'd torn her sandwich in half and handed it to him, even though she clearly didn't have much either. "You matter, you know, even if no one sees it yet." That moment had followed him into every room, every deal, every sleepless night. And now, he was almost certain, it had been her. Across the city, Natalie sat cross-legged on the floor of her apartment, sorting through a tin box filled with keepsakes. Old buttons, a bracelet from summer camp, faded Polaroids, and then, at the very bottom, a napkin, creased and fragile. She unfolded it slowly. "Don't forget you have a future." Her breath hitched. She remembered that boy, the one outside the shelter. Dirty jacket, hands clenched into fists, eyes full of silence. She had offered her sandwich. He hadn't said a word, but something in his face had stuck with her all these years. Could it really be him? She whispered into the quiet. "Is it you?" Outside, the city moved on, horns blaring, trains groaning in the distance. But something had begun to stir. A memory, a thread. Neither of them knew it yet, but the past had quietly cracked open, and the story that once began with a shared sandwich was beginning again. Rain came suddenly that afternoon, sweeping down from the Nashville hills like it had been waiting all day to pour. One moment the sky was overcast, and the next, thunder cracked overhead and the streets turned silver with heavy drops. Umbrellas bloomed along the sidewalks, People rushed for cover, and the line at Sunrise Bites scattered like startled birds. Natalie was already outside, rushing to fold up chairs and cover the condiment bins. The awning flapped violently in the wind as she wrestled with the latch on one of the tables. Her ponytail was soaked, strands of golden hair clinging to her cheek, but she kept working. "Stubborn thing," she muttered, kicking one of the jam table legs. "Let me help." The voice startled her, deep, calm, familiar. She turned, and there he was, Caleb, holding a large black umbrella over both of them, his shirt already dotted with raindrops, dark hair damp across his forehead. "You're going to get drenched," she said. "Too late for that," he smiled, gripping the other end of the table and helping her collapse it. Within seconds, they had everything stacked and locked. Natalie ducked under the truck's overhang, shivering a little. Caleb followed her, still holding the umbrella over her head, even though they were technically in shelter now. "Thank you," she said, brushing water from her arms. "Most people would have just run." He looked at her quietly for a moment. "You're not most people." There was a pause. Rain hammered on the tin roof above them, a soft and steady rhythm. Then he asked, voice gentler than she'd ever heard it, "Do you believe people can change because of one moment?" Natalie turned to him, brows raised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if your whole life was going one way and then, in just a few minutes, someone said or did something that made you believe it didn't have to be that way, could that be enough to change a person?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied his face. There was no playful smirk this time, no sarcasm, just quiet weight. "If the moment is strong enough," she said softly, "then yeah, I think it can." Caleb nodded, eyes drifting past her like he was looking through time. "I was 10, he said, living in a shelter outside of Knoxville. My mom had just left, no note, no goodbye. I remember sitting on the cold cement steps outside the food line, trying not to cry, but failing anyway." Natalie blinked. The image, it tugged at something in her. This girl came out of the food line. She had blonde hair, dirty sneakers, carried 2 sandwiches in her hands. She stopped in front of me, sat down like we were old friends, and she gave me half. Natalie's breath hitched. She didn't ask why I was crying. She didn't try to fix it. She just sat with me, and before she left, she handed me a napkin with something scribbled on it. He glanced at her, something fragile in his expression. It said, "Don't forget you have a future." Natalie stared at him, unmoving. The sound of the rain seemed to grow distant. Caleb looked away, almost embarrassed. "It sounds stupid, I know, but I kept that napkin. It was the first time in my life I believed someone might actually see me, that maybe I mattered." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you still have it?" He nodded. "Yeah, it's in a box. I never showed it to anyone, until a few nights ago." Natalie opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her throat was too tight. She remembered the sandwich, the boy, his trembling hands, how she'd torn a napkin from the dispenser and written the first thing that came to her heart. She hadn't even known his name. She just remembered how lonely he looked and how familiar that kind of loneliness felt. She started, but stopped. Their eyes met. The storm outside raged on, but between them there was only silence and the echo of something long buried. She didn't say it. Neither did he. But somehow both their hearts knew. They had met before, and somehow, without even realizing it, they had found each other again. Inside the food truck, the air was thick with the scent of caramelized onions, toasted sourdough, and melted cheddar. Outside, the evening chill wrapped around Nashville like a quiet lullaby. But inside Sunrise Bites, it was warm and glowing. Golden light from overhead bulbs gave everything a soft, almost magical hue. Caleb sat on the small bench tucked against the back wall, elbows resting on the counter, watching Natalie work. She moved with practiced grace, flipping slices of bread on the griddle, sprinkling herbs, humming to herself like she had done this her whole life. "Okay," she said, plating 2 sandwiches with flair. "You're about to experience the best grilled cheese of your life." Caleb chuckled. "That's a bold claim." Natalie handed him one of the plates, then sat across from him. "It's not just grilled cheese, it's Mama's melt. My mom's recipe. Extra butter, 2 cheeses, and," she held up a finger, smirking, "a secret layer of spicy tomato jam. Ask for the recipe, and I'll have to bury you behind the truck." He took a bite and paused, eyes widening. "Told you," she said, smug. "That's not just good," he replied slowly. "That's comforting." Her expression softened. "Yeah, that's what she used to say. Food should make people feel safe." For a moment, the only sound was the faint sizzle from the griddle. The world outside faded. "Do you always eat dinner in here?" he asked. Natalie nodded. "Most nights. Sometimes my brother joins, but he hates crowds. And smells. And people. Breathing near him." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Your brother?" "Lucas," she said, sipping from a thermos. 17. High-functioning autism. He's brilliant, but the world's too loud for him sometimes. I'm kind of his safe space." Caleb looked at her differently now. There was no self-pity in her voice, just fierce, grounded love. "After our mom passed, it was just us. I was 22 trying to figure out my own life, and suddenly I was raising a kid. I sold my car, borrowed from a distant aunt, and bought this rusted-out truck off Craigslist." "You fixed it yourself?" he asked. "Pretty much. Lucas helped, and a friend did the wiring. Some guys from the garage across the street let me borrow tools. Took a year, but here we are." He leaned forward slightly. That's incredible." Natalie shrugged. "It wasn't brave or anything. I just didn't see another option." He studied her face. "You make it sound easy." "It wasn't," she said simply. "But it was honest." Caleb looked down at his sandwich. "I envy that." She raised an eyebrow. "Envy what?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "That your world is real. My life is all numbers, silent offices, people who pretend they like you but really want something. Everything's measured in metrics and ROI." Natalie listened, not interrupting. "And somewhere along the way," he continued, "I stopped being a person, became a brand, a projection. Sometimes I look in the mirror and think, who even is that guy?" She reached for a napkin, folded it once, and slid it across the counter. "You're still a person," she said gently. "Just maybe a little lost." Their hands touched. Neither moved away. Outside, life continued. Horns, footsteps, city noise. But inside that narrow truck, time seemed to slow. They finished eating quietly. Natalie poured him another cup of coffee. He offered to do the dishes. She rolled her eyes, but let him. And in that little, cluttered kitchen under flickering bulbs, Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in years. Home, not the kind built with walls and gated drives, but the kind made of warmth, of small moments, of someone who remembers exactly how you like your sandwich. The morning started like any other. Sunlight peeked over the rooftops of Nashville's historic district. The street was alive with its usual rhythm, baristas calling out orders, street performers tuning guitars, and a small line forming at Sunrise Bites. Natalie moved around the truck, tying her apron, prepping her griddle, humming softly. And Caleb was there, as he had been every day for the past few weeks. Same navy coat, same awkward hesitation before ordering, same warmth in his eyes that she was just beginning to trust. She handed him his coffee without needing to ask, and he smiled, that quiet, grateful smile that always made her stomach flutter just a little. But the peace wouldn't last. It started with a camera flash, then another, then the unmistakable sound of screeching tires as a black SUV pulled up along the curb. The doors flung open, and out stepped a swarm of people with cameras, microphones, and booming voices. "Caleb, Mr. Walker, is it true you've been living a double life?" Caleb Walker, CEO of Walker Innovations, hiding in plain sight? Why the disguise? Natalie froze. Coffee slipped from her hand and splashed onto the pavement. Her mind went blank, her heart suddenly pounding like a drum in her chest. Walker? No, not Caleb Walker. The name hit her like a slap. The name she had read on 100 billboards, in financial news, on startup headlines. Walker Innovations. The tech empire, the billionaire CEO. Caleb stepped forward quickly, hands raised to shield her. "Stop," he said, voice firm but calm. "This is private property. You need to leave." A reporter shoved a mic in his face. "Is it true you've been pretending to be a regular guy to flirt with a food truck girl?" That was the last straw. Natalie's eyes widened in disbelief. "A what?" she breathed, voice shaking. The crowd turned toward her, cameras pointed, phones lifted. She didn't flinch at the attention. Her gaze was fixed only on him. "You're," she choked out, "you're that Caleb Walker?" He tried to speak, but she cut him off. "So the guy who stammered through his coffee order, who shared grilled cheese in my kitchen, who listened to stories about my brother, that was all just, what? A game?" Caleb stepped forward, desperately. "No, Natalie, I swear, it wasn't a game." "Then what was it?" Her voice rose, sharp with betrayal. "What else didn't you tell me? Your last name, your company, your fortune?" The crowd murmured, eating it up like entertainment. A few people had their phones out, filming. Caleb turned, furious. "Turn those off. This isn't a press event." But it was too late. Natalie stood stiffly, arms folded across her chest, jaw clenched to hold back the flood behind her eyes. "Private?" she said bitterly. "Like our dinners, our stories, our laughs?" Caleb's face twisted with pain. I didn't lie to manipulate you. I didn't come here to trick you." "Then why did you lie?" "Because I didn't want you to look at me like everyone else does," he shouted. "I just wanted to be seen as me, not a wallet, not a CEO, just me." Natalie swallowed hard, her hands trembling. Well, too late for that. She turned away, stepping back into the food truck. The smell of grilled onions and fresh dough filled her nose, but it felt foreign now, like it belonged to someone else's story. Caleb stood frozen outside, the flash of cameras still going off around him, but the only thing he saw was her back, her shoulders tense, her head bowed, her heart walking away from his. He reached out, voice barely audible now. "Natalie, please." She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. The door slammed shut behind her, and the silence that followed was louder than anything the cameras could capture. The streets of Nashville felt quieter now. Sunrise Bites was gone, not just closed for the day, but shuttered. The once colorful food truck that had brought warmth and community to the corner of Pine and Rosewood now sat abandoned behind a locked fence in a dusty repair lot. Natalie stood in her tiny kitchen apartment, staring at the classified ad on her laptop. "For sale, used food truck, good condition, needs love." Love. That part stung. Lucas walked in, rubbing his eyes, still in his pajamas. He didn't speak much in the mornings, but he noticed the silence that had replaced the usual smell of bacon and sizzling bread. "Are we not cooking today?" he asked softly. Natalie blinked. She turned from the screen, her throat tightening as she knelt in front of her brother. "No, baby," she whispered, pulling him into a hug. "Not today." His arms wrapped around her neck. "But you always cook on Fridays. That's Mama's melt day." A sob caught in her throat. She clutched him tighter, burying her face in his shoulder. "I know," she said brokenly. "I know." Lucas didn't understand the details about viral headlines, billionaires, lies, or betrayal, but he understood when Natalie's hands shook while holding a spatula. He understood when her eyes didn't smile anymore. He rested his chin on her shoulder. "Did someone hurt your heart?" Natalie let out a strangled breath. "Yes." Across town, Caleb sat in the corner office of Walker Innovations. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooding the room with light he didn't feel. His assistant knocked once, quietly. "Mr. Walker, the quarterly board meeting?" "Ansel it." But the investors from Zurich, I said cancel it. She hesitated, then backed out slowly. The door closed, leaving him alone again. He stared at his reflection in the glass. It didn't look like him anymore. Not the real him, just the carefully crafted mask of a man who had everything, except the one thing he wanted. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a small tin. Dented, faded, something he'd carried with him across foster homes, shelters, dorm rooms, offices. Inside, tucked beneath old photos and receipts, was a square piece of paper, yellowed with age, faded but still legible. "Don't forget you have a future." Written in blue ink, a little crooked, probably done in a hurry. He could still remember the day she'd handed it to him. A scrawny boy with dirt on his cheeks and a storm in his chest. A girl with a warm sandwich, soft eyes, and the kind of hope he didn't believe in. "You matter, you know. Even if no one sees it yet." He hadn't known her name then, but her voice had stayed with him. And now he knew. It was her. It had always been her. The girl from the shelter, the girl with the sandwich, the girl with the smile that told him life could be more than pain and pretending. Natalie. He closed his eyes. This, everything he'd built, meant nothing without her in it. The meetings, the money, the titles. He had built a future like she told him to. But what good was a future if she wasn't in it? Downstairs, his driver waited beside the Bentley. But Caleb wasn't ready to move, not yet. He needed to do something first. Not a gesture, not a grand apology for the cameras, but something real, something that said, "I see you, I remember you, I need you." And this time, he would not lie. This time, he would fight for the truth. Because only now did he realize she wasn't just a girl he'd fallen for. She was the reason he had ever believed in love at all. The ballroom was elegant, crystal chandeliers above, silver cutlery clinking gently below. The annual Nashville Small Business Honors Gala was in full swing, filled with polished suits, sparkling dresses, and the quiet hum of corporate conversation. Natalie stood in the back, near the exit. She had not planned to come. Rosa had begged her to get out of the apartment, to stop letting sadness brew in her bones like oversteeped tea. Natalie had relented, mostly to appease her. She hadn't known Caleb would be speaking. When his name was announced, "Please welcome CEO of Walker Innovations, Mr. Caleb Walker," her breath caught. Her first instinct was to leave, but her feet refused. She stayed. Caleb walked to the podium. He wore a black suit, no tie, the first two buttons of his shirt undone. There were dark circles under his eyes, a stillness in his movements she hadn't seen before. He pulled out a sheet of paper, paused, then folded it in half and set it down without reading. A murmur rippled through the crowd. He looked out across the sea of faces, but his gaze found only one. Natalie. She didn't smile, she didn't nod, but she stayed. "And so," he began, "I was asked to speak about leadership tonight," Caleb said, voice calm, but laced with something deeper. "About innovation, vision, success. I had something prepared, charts, bullet points, the usual." He glanced down, then back up, but I threw it out, because none of it felt real anymore. The room quieted. Caleb took a breath. "She ran a food truck," he said simply. "I ran a corporation. She woke up before dawn, fed 100 people with 2 hands and 1 griddle. I sat in boardrooms talking about scaling and strategy." He paused. "But she served healing. I served numbers. And yet, I'm the one who was fed." Gasps, soft ones. He wasn't performing. He wasn't selling. He was confessing. "There's a woman I met not long ago," he continued. "She didn't care who I was, didn't care about my title or bank account. She cared whether I said please and thank you, whether I gave up my spot in line to someone older, whether I remembered that people matter more than profits." He looked down, voice lower now, and I lied to her. Not because I wanted to trick her, but because I was afraid that if she saw who I really was, She'd stopped looking at me the way she did when she thought I was nobody. A long silence. Then he looked up again, directly toward the back of the room. "Tonight, I want to say something without the suit, without the title, just as a man who fell in love with someone honest and kind and infinitely braver than he ever was." The room held its breath. "I don't deserve her forgiveness, but I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." No applause, not yet. He stepped down from the podium slowly, without a bow, without a smile, and began walking through the crowd. People turned in their chairs. Whispers followed, but Natalie didn't move. She stood still, hands clenched in front of her, eyes shining, and for the first time since everything fell apart, her heart cracked open just enough to let the truth in. The sun stretched its golden fingers across the quiet streets of downtown Nashville. Morning air crisp, still, full of a promise Natalie no longer believed in. She unlocked the side door of Sunrise Bites, the old truck she had pulled out of storage, not to sell, not to cook, but simply to remember what it meant, who she used to be. But this morning, he was already there. Caleb stood a few feet away, no suit, no driver, no phone, just jeans, a worn navy jacket, and tired eyes that hadn't slept. He looked like a man who had waited all night. Natalie froze. "I didn't want to knock," he said softly. "Didn't want to force anything open." "You're persistent," she replied. He smiled faintly. "So are you." A silence stretched, no longer sharp, just heavy with things unsaid. Then he stepped forward, pulled a folder from his satchel, and held it out. She hesitated but took it. Inside, a formal business proposal. Expansion plans for Sunrise Bites, 5 locations across Tennessee, preserving her recipes, her name, her story. At the bottom, one line stood out. Majority ownership, 51%, Natalie Quinn. She looked up. "You're giving me control?" "Yes." "Why would you give that up?" Caleb moved closer. "Because you taught me love isn't about owning, it's about offering." Then he dropped to one knee. Not with a ring, but with a spoon. A metal spoon engraved with her grandmother's name. "Natalie Quinn," he said, voice shaking. "Will you be my partner in business, in life, in everything?" Tears welled. Her laugh broke through them like light. "Only if you promise to never pretend again." "Never," he whispered. She pulled him up into her arms and held him like home. 6 months later, the tiny chapel doors opened, flooding the room with golden morning light and the smell of coffee and warm bread from the new Sunrise Bites restaurant next door. Caleb stood at the altar, nervous, tie crooked. James, his former driver, now best man, leaned in. "She's not running, boss." "I know," Caleb whispered. "Still feels like a dream." Then she appeared. Natalie walked down the aisle alone. No bouquet, just the engraved spoon tied with a ribbon. Her dress soft ivory, her hair golden, loose, glowing in the sunlight. Lucas sat in the front row, clapping in an oversized suit. Familiar faces from the food truck lined the pews. Mr. Hargrove, Rosa, Miguel the construction worker. Sitting beside board members and executives, a family not by blood but by food, forgiveness and second chances. "You look perfect," Caleb whispered. "You clean up pretty well, billionaire boy," she replied. The officiant smiled. "Do you, Caleb Walker, take Natalie Quinn to be your wife, your equal partner, your midnight taste tester?" "I do. Every morning. Every night. Forever." "And do you, Natalie Quinn, take Caleb Walker to be your husband, your co-fammer, your soft-hearted CFO?" "I do," she laughed through tears, "even if he still can't cook an egg." The kiss was imperfect, joyful, real. At the reception next door, the walls were lined with framed napkins, handwritten thank yous, and one square of paper in the center. "Don't forget you have a future." Above it, the new sign gleamed. Sunrise Bites, a love story in every dish. Because some love stories do not begin with sparks. They begin with sandwiches. with small kindnesses, with the courage to come back when it hurts. And now they had finally come home. Thank you for joining us on this heartwarming journey of love, second chances, and unexpected connections. If Natalie and Caleb's story touched your heart, made you smile, or believe in love again, then we've done our job. At Soul Stirring Stories, we share tales that heal and inspire. Hit the hype button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment that matters. Tell us your favorite part in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep believing in stories that touch the soul. This is Soul Stirring Stories.